Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Tutor Linear Test Prep. Today we'll be providing a full walkthrough of the Digital PSAT 89 Math, Linear P89 Test Unique number 1. Quick disclaimer, this video will cover the linear non-adaptive PSAT 89 practice tests found on College Board's website. Many of the questions from these tests are duplicated in the Blue Book app, which I've already covered in previous videos. This video will only cover the unique questions, so there are no repeats. A link to the Linear Test Unique PDFs will be in the description. I highly recommend you complete the questions yourself before watching this video. Let's get started. Alright, so I talked about this in my Ottocento video. I think it's the second one on unit conversions. So definitely check that out. I'm going to kind of assume you've already watched that. So we're going to first write what we're starting with, so 612 inches. Then we're going to set up a parenthesis. And we're going to put our conversion factor, there's only one for this problem, in the parentheses, so the 1 yard and the 36 inches. I'm going to put the 36 inches on the bottom and the 1 yard on the top. The reason why I'm doing this is so that when they are on opposite sides of the division sign, these units will cancel. If you flipped it the other way, they would not cancel, so you would be in trouble. So make sure they cancel before you go to the calculator. Now, before, I'm not going to do, even though this one is pretty straightforward, I'm not going to do any math in my head. I'm going to go to Desmos and type it in exactly as I wrote it. So 612, parenthesis, 1 over 36, which, as you can see, guys, leaves us with units of yards in my diagram. So this is 17, as you can see, so let's write that. This should be 17 yards. So just make sure you know how to use the factor label method and make sure that you are certain that the units cancel before you move on. Okay, so the answer for this one should be B, and that is correct. Let's keep going. Okay, this is on the reference sheet. The area of a rectangle is length times width. So for this one, we have a length of 36 and a width of 34. So the area is 36 times 34, which should be, let's see what that is, 1,224. Nothing crazy going on with the units. That should be answer choice D, and that is correct. Okay, for this one, so it says during which of the following time periods did the greatest increase occur? Okay, so I'll just circle all of them and draw like a little line segment. So x equals 6 to x equals 7. That is here, so I'll call that A. X equals 5 to x equals 6. That is here, so we could call that B. X equals 2 to x equals 3. That is here, so we can call that C. And D, x equals 1 to x equals 2. Okay, so let's label that as well. We can call that D. So the question says we want the greatest increase. So we just want the one that went up the most. D and B both went down, so those are probably wrong. And between A and C, it seems like C is steeper. So for a fixed change in X, that is probably a bigger change. So I'm going to say C. And even if we computed it, C goes from like 60 to 75, so that's like about 15. And then A only goes from like 62 to like 65, so maybe it only goes up by like 3. So C definitely seems like it increases way more. Let's see if that's right. 1.12 is C. Good, let's keep going. All right, they love asking these on the Digital SAT. These kind of like, I really I will eventually make a future video on this, unit analysis in equations. So I'm going to just rewrite the equation over here, 5.48x plus 7.30y equals 1277.94. So you see, kind of the idea is, guys, that in an equation, for the equation to make sense, every term has to have the same units. Think about it, right? If you said 12 inches plus 10 miles equals 22 kilometers, that doesn't make any sense, right? So each of these terms, this one, and this one, all have to have the same units. So what I always like to do for these questions is I'd like to first focus on whatever's over here, because there's usually some number just by itself. So 127.994, that represents the store's sales in dollars. So if this guy has units of dollars, then this term must have units of dollars, and this term must also have units of dollars. Okay, let's see what the question's asking us, then we can break it down even further. What the following represents the price in dollars of each smaller container. Okay, so the smaller container is X, has something to do with X. So it's probably something to do with the 5.48 or the X. So right away, C and D, those seem to be related to the large container. C and B, those seem to be related to the larger container. So I'm just going to cross those out right away. Okay, so with very, very little work, I have it down at 2 answer choices, and I can take a 50-50 guess. But I'm not going to do that. So X is the number of smaller containers sold. So this right here is the number, I'll say the units is containers, or number of containers. So now ask yourself, kind of like a unit conversion, it's like a backwards unit conversion. What must the units of this be so that the unit cancels and you're left with dollars? Well, just like we were doing unit conversions, we're going to put on the opposite side the thing we want to get rid of, the containers. And then on the top, we're going to put the unit we want, which is dollars. So the 5.48 should have units of dollars per container. Dollars divided by container. Per is just another way to say division when we're talking about units. So this should be 5.48 dollars per container. And that is the price for each container. Each is a very similar word to per. So our answer should be 5.48. Let's see. Is it A? Yep, A is correct. So there's like, you see, there's like 6 different things they could have asked you about in this question. They could have asked you about this guy. They could have asked you about this guy. They could have asked you about this guy. And then they could have asked you about any of the pieces. So 5.48, X, 7.30, Y. So make sure you understand what all those are. 5.48X isn't the price per each small container. This is like the total price for however many you bought for X containers. See, the 5.48X has units of dollars, but we want something with units of dollars each container or dollars per container. So you see, that's kind of the big difference between A and D, is that D is talking about the price for all of them, but A is just talking about the price for 1. Great. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so we want to find the surface area of a rectangular prism. You don't need to have it memorized, but it kind of does help maybe if you do. So length, this is on the reference sheet, by the way, length, width, height. And do you see how, if you don't believe me, hold up a tissue box. There's 6 faces, and there's 2 of each type of face. So the area is length times width of a rectangle. So you're going to do 2 times each of the 2 types of bases, types of faces, and add them all up. Now, just for the heck of it, I am going to put the equation on the board. Give me 1 second. Okay, so there is a bunch of different ways to write it, but this is my favorite way to write it. So, let's start plugging in the numbers. So 2 length times width. So length is 28. Width is 15. Plus 2 height is 16. Length is 28. 2h height times width. 16 times 15. And now there is absolutely no reason for me to do any of that math in my head. Let's see what this gives us. And I'm just going to write it exactly as it's written. 15 plus 2 times 16 times 28 plus 2 times 16 times 15. And I get a surface area of 2216. And it has the units squared because it's an area. So centimeters squared. And that is correct for that one. So does this show up once in a while? Surface area? Yeah, it does. You probably want to at least be familiar with finding the surface area of a cube, a rectangular prism, and a cylinder. Those are all shapes they've asked about before. Again, for rectangular prism and cube especially, you really don't need to memorize the formula. You can figure it out by going, oh, 2 of those guys, and then 2 of those guys, and then 2 of those guys. But, you know, the Digital SAT is a timed test, so you might be better off just knowing some of these equations by heart. Up to you, but you don't need to memorize it. Okay, next question. So this one just wants us to distribute basically FOIL. So first we do these guys together. D times 8d squared is 8d cubed. And I'm going to do the outer. D times negative 3. That's minus 3d. And now I'm going to do the inner. Negative 6 times 8d squared. That should be minus 48d squared. And now negative 6 times negative 3. That should be positive 18 plus 18. Now the only thing is that they like for you to do is put it in standard form. So from the highest power of d or x to the lowest power. So you see I'm just going to rewrite this. And just make sure when you move something, it has the same sign in front of it. If it's negative, keep it negative. If it's positive, keep it positive. So negative 48d squared, there's a negative in front of him. Negative 3d, there's a negative in front of him. Plus 18. So you see really all I did was kind of switch these two guys around, just being sure that I keep whatever sign it already has the same. Okay, let's see if there's any answer choice that looks like that. Answer choice C, I think that is. Let's check it. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm not going to go over all these. I have a video on this, but I have a Desmos video on this. If you want, what you can do is you can change the letter to X and then graph it, and you could see which one perfectly replaces it. So why don't I just do the correct answer, C? You could do the other ones on your own if you want. 8x cubed minus 48x squared. If it's equivalent, that means it should graph exactly the same. Oops, I accidentally put a D. Let me put X. Great. Okay, so as you can see, I mean, it certainly looks like the answer we got perfectly replaces the question. So even if you didn't do it this way, you could still type it in really quick just to check to make sure you did it right if you weren't sure. All right, let's come back over here and let's keep moving. Okay, what the heck is this saying? Okay, so they get commission earnings of 11% of the total sales they make during the year. This word of is really important, percent of. This year, the salesperson has a goal for the total earnings to be at least 3 times and at most 4 times the base salary. Okay, so he wants to be at least greater than or equal to 3 times and at most 4 times the base salary. Okay, so I'm going to call this S, and then at least is greater than or equal to, and then at most is less than or equal to. But when you write a compound inequality like x is greater than or equal to 3, you kind of flip it. You put the number on the left side. So it's really going to be like this. 3 base less than or equal to s less than or equal to 4 times the base. So you see how you're like, you might be thinking, Kyle, at least you just said that was greater than or equal to. But if you think about it, like this is just s is greater than or equal to 3b. I just rewrote it for the sake of the compound inequality. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So it's between 3 times and 4 times. Okay, so now really all we have to do is come up with an expression for the amount that he makes for, oh, they already told us, by the way, X is the base salary. So I'm going to get rid of these B's and put X's. So let me do that. And then it says plus commission earnings of 11% of the total sales. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, this one's throwing me through a loop. I think I've made some progress. So, first things first, the first thing I did wrong is that S is the sales, but really this thing in the middle, do you see how it says here, is the total earnings. So I'm going to write total earnings. Okay, now we just need to come up with an expression for total earnings, and then we're basically in business. So the total earnings is X, the base salary, plus 11% of. Remember, I talked about my percents video, Ottocento number 1, that when you're doing a percent of, you just divide by 100 and multiply. So this is going to be 0.11 times the sales. So plus 0.11 Okay, now we're going to, I'm just going to solve this as a compound inequality. You can do algebra. If you didn't know this, you can do algebra on a compound inequality. Just instead of both sides, you got to do everything to 3 sides. So I'm going to first, we want to get the sales by itself so that it looks like the answer choices. So I'm first going to subtract x from everything. And I get 2x is less than or equal to 0.11s is less than or equal to 3x. And now to get s by itself, I divide everything by 0.11. So all of a sudden, that is looking a heck of a lot like answer choice B. Man, that question was just very confusingly worded. I don't think I've ever seen one like this before where you have to do algebra on a compound inequality. That's very interesting. Anyway, so let's just go over this again. 3 times and 4 times the base salary. That's how we got the 3x and the 4x. And then this part in the middle came from the first sentence. The total earnings is the base salary plus the 11% of the sales. Of tells you, percent of tells you to multiply. So 0.11 times s. Then it just becomes algebra. Great, let's keep going. Okay, so you could solve for x. But you could also just notice that this expression that they want is this one times 8. 2 times 8 gives me 16. So I'm just going to multiply this whole thing by 8. And I get 16 plus 8x equals 8 times 60 is 480. And that is it. That one's right. Okay, so you could do this completely on Desmos. So 2 plus x equals 60. You could solve an equation using the fast method. We get 58. So 16 plus 8, 58, just use parentheses. And we also get 480. So even if you didn't know how to do that one, probably could have done it in about 10 seconds. Just always make sure you answer what they're asking you guys. Okay. So many people, they would have put 58 as an answer. But that is wrong. It is not 58. That would only be if they were asking you for x, which they're not. Okay, let's do it by hand, then we'll do it on Desmos. So first, I'm going to substitute. I mean, I'm noticing kind of conveniently that this is exactly the same as this. So why don't I sub in that 11 into the 3y? So x plus 11 equals 29. Subtract 11 from both sides, and I get x equals 18. And that's the answer. Great, let's look at Desmos. So x plus 3y equals 29. 3y equals 11. I'm going to zoom out, see where they meet. Okay, they wanted x, so x is 18. But if they wanted y, I could go and type in 3.666666666. And it tells me 11 over 3. So the point was 18, comma 11 over 3. They wanted x, so we say 18. If they wanted y, we would say 11 over 3. Another one you could do really quickly. All right, let's come back over here. Making good progress. This is a literal equation. As soon as you see the word in terms of, the letter you want to get by itself is the one in front, C. So I'm going to circle C in this picture. And we need to move a 42 and an F. They're both being multiplied. So I'll move this over here to make this more obvious. So to get them, to move them, the opposite of multiplication is division. So for these guys, make sure you put your algebra, you actually make sure you show, like what I'm writing in red, the steps of your algebra. Sometimes if you're doing like x plus 4 equals 6, you can just do it in your head. But with literal equations, you can't do that. So I'm going to divide both sides by 42f. And you see this guy goes away and that guy goes away. And we get C equals B over 42f. And that is it. That is answer choice A. And that is correct. So once again, guys, these are called literal equations. These are not easy to do, and there's only one of them. Tops, generally speaking, on every test. So it's not really like the highest yield thing. It takes a lot of work, and you don't get a lot of points for it. So, however, though, if you want to practice it, you can find a million worksheets. You can find Khan Academy, and you can find a million worksheets for free on literal equations if you just Google it. Great. All right, let's look at this one. I don't know how to say that. Davio? The potatoes cost 69 cents per pound. The celery costs 99 cents per pound. If Davio spent $5.34 in total. Okay, so I'm going to make P the pounds of potatoes and C the pounds of celery. So 0.69 P plus 0.99 C equals, that's how much he spent. So he spent 5.34. And now there's another equation that says if in total M bought twice as many pounds of celery as pounds of potatoes. So the celery is double the pounds of potatoes. So just make sure that makes intuitive sense. Let's say P is 3. Then that means C is 6. Does that make sense with the sentence? Twice as many pounds of celery. You see, celery is more. Lots of people would have misread that and put 2C equals P, which would be wrong. So I always recommend when you're coming up with some kind of words to math, come up with a couple, just a sample set of numbers and see if it makes intuitive sense to you. I think that's right. Okay, on the actual test, I would just put that straight into Desmos, but why don't we do this? So we basically have to use substitution. We're going to replace the C. And we get 0.69p plus 0.99 times 2p equals 5.34. Okay, so 0.99 times 2 is 1.98. 1.98 plus 0.69 is 2.67p. And now I divide both sides by 2.67, and I get p equals 2. Now I have to go back to the equation I substituted with, which was that one, and plug that back in so I can find the other variable. So C equals 2p. C equals 2 times 2, which is 4. So the answer is actually 4. So be very careful that you read what it's asking. Lots of people would have put 2 because they thought it was talking about potatoes and they were done. And let's see, 2.17 is D. Good job. We did it. All right. Let's do Desmos now, because this is way easier on Desmos. Okay, so the only thing is you just have to be really careful what you make X and what you make Y. So I'm going to make P X, and I'm going to make C Y. So now I'm just going to rewrite everything we have up there. So 0.69 X plus 0.99 Y equals 5.34. And now I'm going to write C, which is actually my Y. Y equals 2X. And X, which was P, which I made P arbitrarily, was 2. So the potatoes is 2. And Y, which I made C, is 4. So the salary is 4. You still don't know how to come up with those equations, but you see there's absolutely no reason to do that system by hand. You probably, most students, right, they probably already spent a minute or so wrapping their head around this question. There's no reason to then go and do all this decimal math for no reason. So highly recommend you use Desmos once you have the problem figured out and the equations written down. Okay, let's come back over here. Okay, what the heck is this saying? If one of these colonies has 58 worker ants, and that is X. Good. All right, great. So it's basically just telling us X is 58, and it wants us to find the predicted number of larvae, which the question says is Y. Okay, so we're going to just put in 58 into this equation for X. That's it. Remember the line of best fit, not important, but important on other questions. The line of best fit tells you the predicted Y value. The actual Y value, you would need a scatter plot or a table. Okay, so 0.67 times 58 plus 2.6, and we get a Y of 41.46, and that is A, and that is correct. And notice how in the question they say which of the following is closest to. So that's basically your cue. They're saying, hey, it's not going to come out exactly. Don't worry about it. That's how they tell you that. So closest to just means, hey, it's going to be a little off. Just which one is closest to what you got. It doesn't mean you got that. So don't let that confuse you. All right, great. That one seemed not so bad. Okay, stupendous. Definitely check out my Ottocento #1 on percents. I go over this in great detail. So percent multiplier, if it's an increase, you do 1 plus the percent divided by 100. If it's a decrease, you do 1 minus the percent divided by 100. So as you might have guessed, greater is an increasing word. So 40% greater, that is telling us a 40% increase. So don't do any of this in your head. I'm going to go to Desmos, figure out the percent multiplier. 1 plus 40 divided by 100. So the percent multiplier is 1.4. So I'm going to write that down. 1.4. And now I'm just going to do my original and then apply my percent multiplier to get the final. So original times percent multipliers equals final. So the original is 115. The percent multiplier is 1.4. And the final is what we're trying to find, what number. So I'm going to call that X. Let's do 115 times 1.4. That's 161. So the answer to this one is 161. So for an increase, you do 1 plus the percent divided by 100. And for a decrease, you do 1 minus the percent divided by 100. I have like an hour-long video going over this. It's my first Ottocento video, #1 on percents. Please go check that out if this confuses you at all. Percent multipliers is one of the most important things on the test. So many people don't understand it. So make sure you know how to calculate it. And since you get a calculator the whole time, makes it much easier. All right, let's move on. We've got a couple more here. Okay, f of 8 is approximately equal to 82. Okay, I'm going to write that down. All right, now I'm going to, f of 8. F of 8. Now I'm going to label each of these. So look at the function notation in the problem. The x is inside the parentheses. So x in this problem is just x. So the 8 is inside the parentheses. So he is x. Now, the thing in front of the function, that is your output or your y. So that goes on the other side. So we're going to put an f here. Now I'm going to figure out what the heck x and f are. X is the years after Emmanuel purchased it. And it says the function f, blah, 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 just ignore that, gives the predicted value in dollars of the rare coin. Okay, so when x equals 8, f equals 82, and now I'm just going to figure that out in the context. So when, so like 8 years, I'm just reading it exactly from the paragraph. 8 years after Emmanuel purchased it, we predict that the rare coin has a value of $82. So I'm just copying. I'm not even I haven't looked at the answer choices a single time. I'm doing all this without looking at the answer choices, because if I don't know what's going on, the answer choices are going to trick me, and I don't want that. I want to figure it out first. You don't need the answer choices. All right, so let's see. 8% greater than the predicted value. Well, where the heck? That's not anywhere in our interpretation, right? So that's got to be wrong. All right. When the rare coin's predicted value is approximately $82, it is. Okay, so I see $82, but it is 8 times the predicted value. What? We didn't say anything about that in our interpretation. I'm not seeing that. That's wrong, I think. Okay, from the day Emmanuel purchased the coin to 8 years after Emmanuel purchased the coin, its predicted value increased by a total of approximately $82. No, it doesn't say the change. It says the change in the predicted value. It says the predicted value. So that this part right here specifically increased by a total of, that part seems really wrong. I think the answer is D. So 8 years after Emmanuel purchased the rare coin, that's what we had written. Its predicted value is approximately $82. Great. Okay, so you see how much easier these are if you write them down first before you start looking at the answer choices. So remember what I said too? This letter inside the parentheses goes up here. And this letter in front of the parentheses goes over here. If you make that little chart, X, F, X, Y, and then just put whatever letters X and Y are, it makes, so kind of this 3-step process where you're writing down the point, writing it down literally, and then putting it in the context. If you break it down into steps like that, it makes it so much easier. All right, let's keep going. All right, this is a classic problem. Dataset F consists of 55 integers between 170 and 290. So all of a sudden, we are going to chuck in the integer 10. So we have a bunch of numbers from 170 to 290. And then way, way, way over here, we're going to put in a 10, and that's going to be our new data set, is this 10, with all of this with this 10. So this is called an outlier. In particular, it is a small outlier. A big outlier would be like way over here on the other side. So when you add, so we didn't remove it, we added it. So when you add a small outlier, Hopefully this makes kind of intuitive sense. The mean goes down because that point pulls the mean down. It's kind of like, so averages are very heavily, mean is very heavily affected by outliers. It's just like how if you were, out grocery shopping and then like Bill Gates walked in, the mean income would shoot way up because Bill Gates is a big outlier. So this is a small outlier, so he's pulling the mean down. I don't need to do any calculations. I know it's going down. Now the median, it's going to do the same. It's going to either barely change in the same direction as the mean. It's going to just barely go down, or it's going to stay the same. So the median is either going to move just a teensy bit in the same way the mean did, or it's going to stay the same. So if you don't know those numbers, you don't know for sure if you would have to check. So you would have to see, is it going down or is it staying the same? So you don't know for sure. And notice, guys, this really important key word here, must be less. So do you see how it says must? That's basically saying, wait. So you're saying, if you pick that, you're saying it has to go down. The median does not have to go down. It could stay the same. So this one is good. The mean is definitely less, but the median is not definitely less. The median could stay the same. So the answer is 1 only, which is answer choice A. Wait, what did I do wrong here? Oh, see, I messed up, guys. I have it all mixed up. It says for dataset F than for dataset G. So the mean is for sure lower in dataset G, but dataset F was the one without the 10. So dataset F doesn't have a smaller mean. Dataset F, here, let me add this to the drawing so that it makes more sense. This is F, and then the whole thing is G. So F, so yes, adding that 10 does make it smaller, but I mixed them up, F and G. F is the one without the outlier, so that one actually has a bigger mean. So actually, they're both wrong. Yeah, they're both wrong, the way it's worded. That's really confusing. All right, so the answer for this one is D. So we don't know if the median is going to go down. The mean did go down, but the question was just phrased backwards. It was like, really, it's asking you, like, did it go up? And it's like, well, no, of course not. It's just they switched. See, look, I got confused because they did dataset F, dataset G, and then they said less for dataset F, so they kind of switched them. You see what I'm saying? My mistake. If you guys don't believe me about the median not staying the same, I'll put an example on the board. So let's say I have 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 50. Hopefully you guys can see the median went up when I chucked in the outlier. The median went up from 2 to the average of those two numbers, which is 2.5. So see, the median went up from 2 to 2.5. But if I had, let's say, 1, 2, 2, and then I did 1, 2, 2, 50, you see the median would be 2, and then it would be the average of these two, which would still be 2. So these ones, it did not change. So the median will either move towards the outlier when you add an outlier, or it will stay the same. So if you're not convinced, just see that example I wrote on the board. Okay, great. Let's keep going. Okay, this is on the reference sheet. I'm not even going to pull it up. Right circular cone, the formula. You can look at the reference sheet if you want in the Blue Book app. It's 1/3 pi r squared height, I believe. And really all we're going to do is plug in these numbers. So the height, they say, is 22. So let's write that down. And this is the diameter. So the radius is half the diameter. So 6 divided by 2, which is actually 3. So the radius is 3. Just be careful with that. All right, let's put these numbers in. So 1/3 pi 3 squared times 22. So now we can it wants us, do you see how it wants us to leave the pi in there? So you don't have to type in the pi on Desmos. You can just kind of ignore that. So I'm going to do 1/3 3 squared 22. And I get 66. So this guy is 66 pi. And you see it's n pi. So n pi, that's what they say. So n is 66. So that's what you'd put for your answer, is 66. Now, if you wanted to, type the pi into Desmos, you could. You just press pi. But you would only do that if it said, what is the volume round to the nearest tenth? Like something like that. Like without mentioning the pi. Or if it was like multiple choice, you would maybe notice that. But you see, for this one, I don't really care about the pi, so let me just multiply everything else and then just slap a pi on the end. That was kind of the goal. If you have a scientific calculator that can work with pi, you can just type this whole thing in and it'll simplify it with the pi. But I digress. The shortcut for on your keyboard for pi in Desmos is pi. So you just type pi. Okay, I think that was the last one. Great. Okay, that completes the lesson. Please like and subscribe for more digital SAT math content. If you're interested in my tutoring services, the link to my website will be in the description. I tutor SAT math and all math subjects from about 7th grade to AP/early college level. Thanks for stopping by, and good luck studying.